So let's begin with who are we and why do we do what we do? Split the Difference's aim is to raise awareness and campaign within the United Nations member states for equality and gender parity for boys and men. We encourage consultation, guidance, legislation and policy that support boys and men equally to women and girls. Our ultimate goal is to help convince the UN and UN member states of the need to take proactive action to protect the human rights of boys and men, much in the same way that they currently do for women and girls through work led by the UN Women. We are based in Wales, officially established in 2019 after 6 years of research into international human rights pathways. Our initial projects are focused at a UK level, however, we have already established partnerships within numerous other UN member states, including Canada, New Zealand, America, India and the Sudan, to mention a few. We aim to act as a critical friend to UN state parties, beginning with parties within the UK. We exist to help protect the human rights of boys and men, and therefore this presentation will almost exclusively focus on their specific needs. I make no apology for that, but before we go any further, let me say 4 things about female victims and the charities and public bodies that work hard to protect their rights. Firstly, our vision is for a world where all victims of violence are provided with the protection, support and justice that they need and deserve. And when we say all victims, we very much mean all victims, across the full spectrum of protected characteristics including women, men, boys, girls, people who identify as non-binary or transgender, people with a disability, people of all ages, races, religions, sexual orientations, and in all cases members of their families who are often also affected. Secondly, we do not promote or support positions that advocate removing resources from female victims to address the existing gaps in support and services for boys and men. Thirdly, we respect the right of charities to restrict their services and support to female victims and to promote an ethos of by and for women in their approach to service delivery. And fourthly, we support the right of public authorities to fund and deliver gender-specific services and strategies when they have shown to be a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. And to best explain why we focus exclusively on the human rights of boys and men, I now ask you to consider the human rights pathway that led us to start our campaign in Northern Ireland. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the first and arguably the most important brick in the pathway to protection for fundamental rights for all. Adopted by the United Nations in 1948, it committed member nations, including the UK, to recognise that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, entitled to basic human rights including the right to life and liberty and freedom from slavery and torture, and entitled to these rights without discrimination. Over the subsequent 70-odd years, there have been many more significant bricks and bridges added to this pathway to protection for people at international, national and regional levels. Most relevant to this discussion are the Council of Europe's Convention on Human Rights, the UK Parliament's Human Rights Act 1998, and at Northern Ireland level in the same year, the Northern Ireland Act 1998. And as you can see, if we add a traffic light system to our pathway to protection, once again and crucially, all of these significant milestones include everyone within their scope of protection. Other relevant milestones along the path that are especially relevant to domestic and sexual abuse include the UN Convention for the Elimination and Discrimination of Women, or CEDAW for short, and the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, better known as the Istanbul Convention. Both of these conventions have been ratified by the UK government, and significantly the scope of protection provided by them only applies to women. Now, on the one hand, these conventions are to a large extent signal boosting and clarifying protections that already exist for all, and the argument goes that they address types of violence and abuse that disproportionately affect women. and that boys and men in the UK aren't disadvantaged by the existence of female exclusive human rights instruments because male victims already receive adequate protection from gender-neutral instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Human Rights Act 1998. And besides, as UN Women have put it, equal rights for women does not mean fewer rights for men, because equal rights is not a pie. Now obviously, equal rights clearly are not a pie, but also clearly the state does not have an unlimited resource to invest in infrastructure intended to protect the human rights of all its citizens. And as we will see, enhanced levels of protections at international, national and regional level can have a significant influence on how those not unlimited resources are directed. For example, since 1989, the UK government have been required to regularly report to the UN on actions they have taken to protect women from violence and to provide female victims with appropriate support services. Not all victims of violence, just female ones. And since 2012, the UK government and devolved assemblies have also been required to regularly report to the European Commission on actions taken to protect and support female victims of violence. Again, not all victims of violence, just female ones. And this has significantly informed the Home Office's approach to tackling domestic and sexual violence in England and Wales, which for over a decade they have progressed through their strategy to tackle violence against women and girls, which, as well as encouraging terminology and data recording approaches that diminish the visibility of male victims, it also ring-fences the vast majority of public money flowing from it for service providers within what has become known as the violence against women and girls sector. And this uniquely gendered approach to progressing public policy is justified by the repeated claim that the overwhelming majority of victims of these crimes are female,